back. I had to start a different stream because the other one was starting to do the closeout thing. Give it just a couple minutes here and then I'll start with the reading. Hope everyone's doing good. I love all you guys so much. If you want to support my small farm or small channel, it's just www.paypal.me/Pike A. Hey, E-Dog. Good to see you. Yep, I just decided to start a new stream and not fight the internet. So I'm going to start off with a reading here. First story I'm going to read is by Marina Buryakova, and it's called Heaven Above Loneliness. One of the most noticeable consequences of the fall of man is a feeling of loneliness. It sits in the subcortex. It haunts a person all his life. A person unconsciously perceives himself as something completely separate from everything else, as something self-determining, and no one but himself really needs it. To put it a little differently, a person feels that he is to no one, even close ones, is not needed as much as he needs himself. After all, his death is death only for him. The rest can grieve. Loved ones can be extremely hard, but they will still live when I die. And those who died during my lifetime, those whom I mourned heartily, was their death my death? Death is only mine, life is only mine, existence is only mine. Pain, sorrow, misfortune are also only mine. No matter how much other people have compassion for me, compassion is still not the same as suffering. I know this from my own experience and from someone else's experience of compassion. One priest serving in a hospital house church said the following: I will enter the oncology ward and do everything to support the person lying there on the bed. I will try to find words for him. I will receive his confession. I will give him communion if he asks for it. But then I'll come out, not just out of the room, but out of his situation, and he'll stay there until the end. I will go on with my life, and he will be left to die. And I understand this very well. But this is about suffering, obvious outwardly and understandable to everyone, but there is also internal spiritual pain, and it, as a rule, is unknown or knowingly incomprehensible to others. It's difficult to tell about it. Even to a person whom you trust as yourself, it is difficult, if only because it would be too long and difficult for him to tell. And for ethical reasons, the causes of our inner pain are sometimes not subject to disclosure. We all have to keep silent about many things, to be alone with a lot of things, and this increases the feeling of loneliness. I am alone in this incomprehensible universe. It's scary. This is constant tension, the underlying cause of our vulnerability, problematic psychological traumas. If you look into it, any of our painful experiences is precisely the experience of loneliness. Love, especially love in the family, partially relieves this tension, heals a person, showing him how important he is to his loved ones. But that is why family life is sometimes difficult. That is why it is perceived as a kind of minefield, that this thread is actually thin and always breaks somewhere. It takes patience and courage to tie its ends day after day. It's not for nothing that wise people say that the family is a daily work. And if people are not wise and do not understand this, the family either collapses or dries up and, in fact, no longer lives, although it retains the appearance of well-being. What is noteworthy is that love that we call natural, parents to children, a man to a woman to a man, it can be very strong, deep, both needy and giving. But sometimes it not only does not save us from loneliness, but on the contrary strengthens this feeling. A loving person on the outside and the beloved one is somewhere on the inside. It turns out that the lover does not love him. A person suffers alone with himself, and there outside there is love, which perhaps really wants to help him, but turns out to be powerless. Or even traumatic, because you are unable to understand and accept his inner state. In whose life have there been so much dramas? In whose life have there been no such dramas? And this is despite the fact that a lonely person needs love. Yes, the very deep trauma of personal loneliness makes us hungry for love, makes us look for it, or replace it with numerous surrogates. The habit of looking at all the mirrors of this world at once, artificially inflating one's significance, attracting attention to oneself at almost any cost, achieving success, fame, not remembering the eternal words. Do not weigh all this to whom thou shalt leave. This is a moral disease. It is a sin. But it's the same ontological loneliness that tempts a person to the sin. The feeling of universal loneliness is exacerbated when you endure defeats, failures, resentments, when you find yourself unclaimed. You lose relatives and friends, when a bodily illness or other calamity befalls you. Opening the gospel, you find it in words about the closest connection between man and God, Christ and Christian, about the meaning that man has for God, and about how God continues himself in man. Abide in me and I in you. As a branch cannot bear fruit of its own accord unless it be on the vine, so also are you. Unless you are in me, I am the vine, and you are the branches. Whoever abides in me, and I in him, bears much fruit. For without me you can do nothing. Whoever does not abide in me will be cast out like a branch and will wither. But such branches are gathered and thrown into the fire, and they are burned. If ye abide in me, and my words abide in you, ask whatsoever ye will, and it shall be done unto you. By this my Father will be glorified, if you bear much fruit and be my disciples. As the Father has loved me, I have also loved you. Abide in my love. John 15:4-9. But these words, as well as the words of the prayer for the disciples, John 17:6-26, can turn out to be for us, albeit beautiful, but still only words if we do not find within ourselves that bit of humility that will give us the opportunity not only to understand with our minds, but also to feel with our whole human being. Each of us did not accidentally find ourselves in this world and does not exist in it on his own. My life is not only mine. Each of us is a living, unmerged, but in a separate particle of created being, a particle that is always directly connected with its creator. And everything that happens to you happens in this one being, and not only for you, but also for him. This is despite the fact that his event is not my event. It is understandable. God's view is not my view. The Creator knows what is really happening to me in true reality, and I feel and experience what is happening to me in her model, a model that I create myself, which is created by society, culture, a model that is conditioned by the historical moment and the moment of my personal development. My true fate is a mystery to me, but a mystery does not mean something that is forever closed and does not seem to exist for me. The mystery of God's providence about me is revealed in different ways. In my various events, discoveries, meetings, inner states, intuitive actions, which sometimes surprise me myself. It is revealed in my ability to love others, and this is really an ability, a gift. It is revealed and at the same time remains a mystery. This is probably how it should be. How much we need this sense of mystery, the mystery of what is happening to us. If this feeling is not there, we live on a plane and we find it ourselves in three-dimensional space and feel the vertical. When we wake up in the morning, we more or less imagine the day ahead, although we know that any surprises can happen in it. But happy is the person who, in addition to this knowledge, also has a sense of mystery. The mystery of what the Lord will do with him today, what kind of life he will spend with him, what will he show him, what will prompt him to think about. In this feeling, there is already a meeting after which a person should no longer feel lonely. He should not, but he will feel it more than once or twice, since our fallen nature is slippery and inert, and we have to fight for a true spiritual life all our earthly term. And you can get tired, you can despair in the struggle, and if something helps, then only humility. After all, it consists in the fact that you do not separate yourself from God. You do not attach any separate, special importance to yourself. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 5:3. A person will humble himself only when all the possibilities of self-elevation are over. And some will still try to do it earlier, looking at a wild flower, at a singing gray bird, at a butterfly, looking into the eyes of another person and realizing that this person is the same universe as himself. Opening the gospel and reading the words, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Matthew 11:28-30. What does it mean to take his yoke upon you? The yoke of Christ is love, love for the Father expressed in the fulfillment of his will, love for people whom the Father has entrusted to the Son. To take the yoke upon oneself means to love God and one's neighbor. Why is this burden light? Because it is natural for a person. This is exactly how a person should live. It is in this dimension that he is called to grow. If we understand and accept this, even if not immediately, with difficulties through obstacles, we will acquire not only a sense of mystery, but also a sense of that very living connection about which Christ speaks more than once or twice in the gospel. And this peace, inner silence, spiritual health, and finally a rising above loneliness. This was by Marina Buryukova, May 26th, 2025. I do too, but then I realize that we're never alone. God and our guardian angel are always with us because he's everywhere, present, and fillest all things. That's something that I've been pondering a lot lately. He's not just there next to you or me or anybody else that we know, but he's with all of us everywhere at all times. It's just so amazing to think about. Yep. Sometimes he separates us from others so that we can heal. Even to us, sometimes it feels like total destruction. Especially if you get trapped in and weathered in a cabin. In Alaska, it kind of forces you to think about things in your life to even more of an extreme level. Next article that I'm going to read for us, I think it adds to the first one. To cling to God with one's soul, consolation for those who are lonely. Elena Nasledisheva. Oh, loneliness, how cool your character is, sparkling with an iron compass. How coldly you close the circle, not heeding useless assurances. By Bella Ekmadulina. Loneliness. Many people are frightened by the very thought of it, and in late autumn and cloudy winter, nature itself contributes to these thoughts. Loneliness can creep up unnoticed. This feeling can ripen in the soul gradually and suddenly. spontaneously grow into a stupidly aching feeling of his incomprehension and uselessness, or it can collapse sharply and dramatically with all its power and irreparably if those with whom you shared the same home, the same life, parents, children, spouses, die or leave for a distant country, and what to do then, how not to despair and live on, how to cope with the gaping, dreary emptiness inside yourself and around you. Wait, but in reality, every person on earth is alone. Loneliness is inherent in each of us much deeper than we used to think. How so? Take a look at the axioms of religious experience by the famous philosopher and thinker Ivan Ilyin. Each of us, in spite of the constant, everyday conscious and unconscious communication, fulfills his life and carries out his earthly path from birth to death in deep and inescapable solitude. It is gratifying to forget about this loneliness, but it must be remembered. This loneliness, equally inherent in each and every one, is expressed physically in the fact that the individual spiritual life of each of us proceeds in a kind of isolation, closed and inescapable to others. Someone else's soul is in the dark. No one experiences my states. Example given, my neuralgia, my depression, my exaltation, as their own and directly accessible to them. No one except myself. No one can let anyone into his soul or turn it out to another. And in hours of mutual distrust or great grief, people suffer greatly from this. Long-term coexistence in a common space, coexistence in the activities of life, long and constant intercourse, and natural or family resemblance cannot violate this law of existence. Man remains subjective, individual, and lonely, and will feel this acutely in the hour of illness, anger, rapture, unhappy love, jealousy, crime, repentance, marriage, mental depression, despair, and death. Moreover, any word will always be powerless to accurately convey everything that I live in the depths of my soul. Words are only weak attempts to teach himself to someone. Perhaps this is worse than torture, to prove something to someone. What to do? There are a lot of recipes now, even too much. Psychologists and pharmacists are ready to offer a lot of techniques and medicines designed to save us from despondency, depression, apathy, or frustration. But there is one special remedy that is available only to a believer, to someone who believes and prays. I will designate it with words that are sublime and poetic, but as it seems to me very precise, to cling to God with one's soul. After all, only he who created us and looks into the very depths of human nature is able to behold this depth, as in the palm of his hand. For thou hast made my inward parts and hast knitted me in my mother's womb. Psalms 138:13. Lord, look upon me and have mercy on me, for I am alone. King David cried out in his prayer several thousand years ago. He believed that God was listening to him. He believed that the Omniscient was not indifferent to his suffering, and therefore he was not alone. Faith and prayer can save the soul from darkness of hopelessness. Faith can really give a person hope and strength to live despite the severity of loneliness, which is so multifaceted. It happens that there is a family and a job and a lot of people around, but everyone is strangers. Strangers in spirit, they think differently, are interested in others, appreciate others, and there is no one to share your thoughts, feelings, and aspirations with. And what if you don't get offended, don't feel sorry for yourself, don't despair, don't blame others and get angry, but cling to God with your soul? He bears his spiritual pain and tries to live in God's way. Whatsoever ye would that men should do unto you, do ye also unto them. Matthew 7:12. And the Almighty, who knows everything that is hidden in the soul of each of his children, better and more accurately than the child himself, will govern, arrange, and enlighten. For some, marriage and family are seen as the only means of getting rid of loneliness. But when the first acute feelings are blunted, the problems of the spiritual plane become bright and prominent. And to be honest, even spouses can be strangers, live under the same roof without becoming related to each other. This topic is as old as the world and so vast that I will not immerse myself in it, but only touch on it slightly. Love, like paradise, is full of bliss. It, like paradise, is a priceless, completely undeserved gift to a man. But like the Garden of Eden, which the Lord commanded man to preserve and cultivate, love must be preserved and constantly maintained. Otherwise, we are losing it. So, what do you do when love is lost and you just don't want to live from a feeling of loneliness, despair, guilt, resentment, or anger about what didn't work out, didn't work out, although you believe that happiness would be? Resentment, anger, sadness, condemnation, the desire for revenge, poison, destruction of the soul, depriving the soul of strength. Why endure these truly hellish torments? It is better to cling to God with your soul, even with tears, with pain, but also with hope, with a request for support and healing of spiritual wounds. And consolation will come, for he who planted an ear will not hear, and who formed the eye will not see. Psalms 93:9. Some are lonely in the family, and others are without it. And it should be emphasized that women are more accurately concerned about lack of demand, uselessness, childlessness. Apparently, this is how their nature works, and how many secret and open tears have been shed on this occasion. And the further in life, the reality becomes harsher. The fear of loneliness is especially strong in the twilight of years. Many are afraid of the autumn of their lives. Bodily strength withers, children go to their families, death takes away loved ones. By the lines of the wrinkles in the truthful glass, we all keep count of our losses, and in the rustle of the hours unhurriedly, stealthily, time flows to eternity. William Shakespeare, Sonnet 77. And if in mature years there is still hope to start something anew, then in old age it's almost impossible. It frightens, gives rise to panic, anger, despondency. But if the hustle and bustle of the past years did not allow you to think about the most important things, then at least now it is worth doing it. It is in solitude that it is easier to purify one's heart and build a personal relationship with God, to cling to God with one's soul. It is even more difficult to talk about loneliness after the death of those to whom we have become so attached that they have become a part of our soul, grew into it, merged with it, and have been with it for most of our lives. Sometimes the protest, the pain of loss and anguish are so great, so significant and fatal, that they do not allow the soul to cling to God. Few people can cope with this. Who knocked on my door with a playful hand? My usual guest is an evening breeze. Scarcely has the day faded beyond the blue mountain. As it flies into my quiet corner, he greeted me and rushed away again. With a little ripple in the water, he glided across the lake. With the trees in the garden whispered about something, and hurriedly to meet the night, silently disappeared. Now everything is quiet until dawn. Nothing will disturb my peace. Only the night moth obedient to the call of the light. Perhaps it will fly into the fire of the lampada, but I won't sleep. Midnight silence. So sweet is my wounded soul, I wait for him all day, as I waited for a date. Once in my mouth with my beloved, once in my youth with my beloved. How alien to me now are the excitement of those mad years, in vain search of lost years. Distant and strange is the world of enmity and noisy disputes, careless cares, joyless feasts. Yes, I am found happiness in the calm thoughts of the flow, and the artless labors in the purity of the heart, and the silence of the nights, oblivion and forgiveness, and in the humble beauty of every flower, and all this in my soul I blissfully contain, forgetting about the vanity of past thoughts and deeds. I do not know sad loneliness. Solitude is my happy joy. So why did God create us in such a way that no one can let anyone into his soul or turn it out to another? Why is it that at any age, from childhood to old age, our soul is not protected from the torment of loneliness? Why are we given to know the oppressive feeling of being useless, of being incomprehensible by other people like us? I know several answers to this, which literally blow up the brain with their paradox. And in the hours of bitter, painful experiences, I try to console myself with them, and also to delve into, to realize, to comprehend. The whole cause of suffering is not around me, but inside. It is not the events that are terrible, but my attitude to them. You can look at the world with love, or you can look at it with irration or something else. But in any case, everything, event, people around, and the weather finally are the way to see and feel them now. At the moment, everything is within us. Many strong emotional experiences are not given to us in order to oppress our spirit, to incline us to despondency. This feeling is more of a call to action. God does not send us despair to kill us. He sends it to awaken us, to awaken new life in us. And here's another surprising thought of St. Augustine, which contradicts our entire human understanding of happiness. Happiness where there is no loneliness. Thou hast created us for thyself, and our heart knows no rest until it rests in thee. And finally, perhaps the most striking thought read by Archbishop John Tchaikovsky: loneliness is the threshold of the highest unity. In the cell of the lonely, there are most of all the doors to love. By Elena Nasledisheva, October 25th, 2024. How can one not love to pray? This is the most important thing. Interview with the new first hierarch of the Russian Orthodox Church outside of Russia, Metropolitan Nicholas Olskovsky, by Tatiana Veselkina. Autumn in New York had not yet gilded the leaves, and the incessant autumn rain covered the city and the surrounding area for 5 whole days. On days like this, you can't go without need. So Metropolitan Nicholas, first hierarch of the Russian Orthodox Church outside Russia, and I drove down Fifth Avenue along Central Park by car, along the famous Museum Mile, past the Metropolitan Museum of Art, past puddled traffic lights, past tourists and New Yorkers hurrying home. During his 12 years of life in Manhattan, Vladika fell in love with this hiking route on fine days, especially in spring and autumn, when Central Park with its lakes, flowering trees, and open-air zoo is incredibly beautiful. And I couldn't help but ask, in the 8 years you've been a bishop here in the middle of an American metropolis, what kind of relationship have you had with Manhattan? In New York, I feel calm. The island of Manhattan is diverse and picturesque. Most of the buildings here are not just buildings, but cultural monuments. But the most important thing for me is that the Synodal House is located here, where Znamensky Cathedral is located. When I have time, I like to walk in or around Central Park. After 10 p.m., Fifth Avenue is quiet. The streets are illuminated. I usually walk to and from the Metropolitan Museum of Art, pray the rosary, or meditate on the content of the sermon. Sometimes people come up and we talk. The computer mouse wants to write with the newly elected first hierarch because only a month has passed since the day of enthronement, and the Russian Orthodox Church outside of Russia uses the term enthronement. But as her Lord is Grace Nicholas, the elected first hierarch of the Russian Orthodox Church outside Russia, His Eminence was commemorated at the litanies for only 5 days from the day of his election, September 13th, to the day of his enthronement, the 18th. When the commemoration began to be performed according to the usual formula accepted in the Russian Church, our Lord His Eminence Nicholas, Metropolitan of Eastern America and New York, first hierarch of the Russian Orthodox Church outside of Russia. The formula is ordinary, but for Metropolitan Nicholas, The youngest first hierarch of the Russian Orthodox Church, much of his new ministry is unusual. According to the rite of St. John of Shanghai, Your Eminence, when Metropolitan Hilarion died, did you have the idea that you might find yourself in the place of the first hierarch? What were your first thoughts? At first there was shock, fear, and only then the first thought, how will I be without him? Despite the fact that Vladika Hilarion had been ill for almost a year, we hoped that after a course of treatment he would return from the hospital to the synod. He himself assumed so, but the Lord judged otherwise. Vladika died on May 16th. We immediately began preparations to bury Vladika with dignity and love in his beloved monastery in Jordanville. I called the eldest bishop of our church, Metropolitan Mark of Berlin in Germany, first vice president of the Synod of Bishops. He said that he would fly to New York the very next day. After the burial of Vladika Hilarion, the members of the Synod held a meeting on May 23rd, where they decided to convene a council of bishops and elect a first hierarch, who, with God's help, will guide our church ship. Why were the elections held 4 months later and not 40 days later, as was the case after the death of Metropolitan Loras? At the meeting of the Synod, various proposals were voiced. I proposed to convene a council of bishops in July in San Francisco, just on the days when the memory of St. John, Archbishop of Shanghai and San Francisco, the Wonder Worker, is celebrated there, and the central cathedral of Mother of God, Joy of Sorrows, where his relics rest. Vladika Mark proposed convening a council in Germany at the monastery of the Venerable Martyr Elizabeth Fyodorovna, where we held the council in 2017. But then they decided not to rush and stopped at September in New York, in the synodal cathedral of Our Lady of the Sign, the home of the Kursk-Root icon, where the election of Metropolitans Filaret, Vitali, Loras, and Hilarion took place. It was decided to hold a council of bishops and the election of the first hierarch. How did the election of the primate take place? We thoroughly checked and followed the rite of election that was composed in 1964 by St. John of Shanghai when Metropolitan Filaret was elected primate. On the morning of September 13th, the Divine Liturgy was celebrated in a conciliar manner, opening the Council of Bishops. Metropolitan Mark delivered a lecture on church life in the parishes and monasteries of the Russian Orthodox Church, after which the bishops moved to the Cathedral of Our Lady of the Sign, where a Moleben was served before the Kursk-Root icon of the Mother of God. The icons of St. John of Shanghai and St. Tikhon, Patriarch of Moscow. And then a secret ballot was held. None of the bishops scored 2/3 in the first round. In the second round, out of the 3 bishops who received the largest number of votes, the majority voted for my unworthiness. The bishops proclaimed Axios. I thanked them for their trust, but to be honest, I was perplexed, even at a loss, and I asked for help of my brethren so that we could continue to preserve our conciliarity, our episcopal family, and work for the glory of God. How much sleep did you have that day? Very little. The following days were busy but joyful. The sessions of the council continued and we visited the new Kursk-Root Hermitage, the first home of the Kursk-Root icon of the Russian diaspora in the USA. Many years ago, the abbess of the Mount of Olives of Moses told me that when she was elected abbess, she prayerfully asked the Lord would send her the same motherly love for all her sisters, without distinction. And so it happened. Did you feel any changes in your heart after your election, after your enthronement? On the day of enthronement, I had a feeling of my unworthiness, and when I was presented with a mantle and a klobuk on the ambo, I suddenly felt calm. I saw around the bishops a multitude of clergy, singers, parishioners, and I realized that we could all continue to work together, pray for each other, and preserve the heritage that we had received. I humble myself when I hear myself commemorated as first hierarch, and I will strive to be a good pastor for my flock, not only in the Eastern American diocese, where I am the ruling bishop, but also in dioceses on other continents. What, in your opinion, should be changed in the Russian Orthodox Church outside Russia, and what should be retained? Our church has a 100-year history beginning with the Great Exodus, and of course we must preserve what we have received. The Orthodox faith, Russian culture, the Russian language and history, the veneration of the Podvig of the new martyrs of our entire church. In addition to eternal missionary work, we need to carry out missionary work among the local population, fulfilling the commandment of Christ, creating English-speaking parishes in America, Canada, Australia, German parishes in Germany, French-speaking parishes in Switzerland and France, and Spanish and Portuguese-speaking parishes in Latin America. In the Synod in the Church of St. Sergius of Razdona, the English language mission was revived on Sundays. The liturgy is served there in English, and later the liturgy is celebrated in Church Slavonic in the Znamensky Cathedral. Some of our parishes and missions in the southern United States serve exclusively in English, and many churches on the East Coast use only Church Slavonic. A symphony has been formed, which we will develop, explaining the beauty of the Orthodox faith and showing the way to salvation to the local population. Vladika, which first hierarchs did you personally know, and what traits would you like to adopt from each one of them? I remember Vladika Hilarion well. He tortured me a reader when he was Bishop of Manhattan, and he presided over my episcopal consecration in 2014. From Vladika Hilarion, I would like to take his kindness, his attention to everyone. He received everyone with love, listened to everyone, and gave everyone a helping hand. Vladika Laurus was a monk in life. As first hierarch, he remained at the monastery in Jordanville. Once a month, he came to the synod on business. I also want to preserve the strong side of his monastic life, monastic vows. Metropolitan Vitali was a strict bishop and ardent preacher. I would also like to bring the fervent word of preaching to our parishioners. Vladika Filaret was a kind archpastor, a calm man of prayer. Do you like to pray? How can one not love to pray? This is the most important thing, to talk to God and the saints. It's like I want to be with you. On imitation and service, this is also about Metropolitan Laurus, isn't it? And what could you take from the course of action of Metropolitan Laurus as first hierarch? Vladika Laurus is a humble man of prayer. He served calmly, but he performed the solemn services very beautifully. He said that when the Ladomirov brethren with Metropolitan Anastasi lived in Geneva in the late 1940s, Vladika Metropolitan served in a cathedral and the two basils, the future Metropolitan Laurus and Archimandrite Flor, served as subdeacons and watched how the first hierarch serves, how he vests, how he blesses. I asked Vladika if he was trying to imitate Metropolitan Anastasi, and he confirmed yes. I try to serve as Metropolitan Anastasi served, and now I try to imitate Metropolitan Laurus in my ministry. You were his cell attendant for a long time. How do you remember Vladika Laurus? I was with Vladika Laurus for the past 10 years of his life. I first saw him as a child. My family went to Holy Trinity Monastery in Jordanville every year. For Trinity, New York, where my brothers Paul and Sergei and I began to serve as altar boys in divine services. Then I studied at Holy Trinity Seminary. In 1998, I graduated from the seminary and stayed in the monastery to do work in a printing house. In 1999, before Great Lent, Vladika's cell attendant, Archimandrite Peter, was appointed head of the Russian ecclesiastical mission. Before leaving, his father, Peter, summoned me and said that from now on I would be responsible for the office and for the sacristy, for the preparation for the services and for the trips. He gave me the keys, and Vladika Laurus blessed me for a new obedience. In 2001, Vladika was going to Russia, which he had visited incognito every year since '92, as a pilgrim, and saw how he could help the faithful. I asked for a blessing to join them. It was my first trip to Russia. Everything was new to me: Red Square, the Cathedral of Christ the Savior, the Donskoy Monastery, Danilov, but the main thing is a trip to Solovki. Our group of 5 to 6 people moved by car to the north of Petrozavodsk from there to Solovki on a working boat on which they carried goods. It was the time of the White Nights. We sailed almost all night. I remember that on Saturday in the morning we suddenly saw the monastery walls. The beauty is unimaginable. We found a modest hotel for pilgrims. Vladika wanted to see the monastery and get to the island of Anzur. We came across a guide who told us everything in detail about the history of the long-suffering monastery. We also managed to visit Sikirnia Mountain. Everyone prayed and was impressed by what they saw. Vladika was glad he was able to visit the place where the new martyrs suffered. He prayed and felt their presence and empathized with them. Vladika Loris worked so hard that when traveling in a car on an airplane, he often slept and spoke little. And when he spoke, he often remembered the monastery and Ladormirovo and Slovakia, how modestly the brethren lived there. He remembered Archbishop Vitali, who baptized him as Archimandrite. Vladika recalled how the brethren from Geneva were going to Jordanville, where Archbishop Seraphim and Vitali lived at that time, trying to obtain visas for the brethren. They had the opportunity to come either to America or to Chile. They were waiting to see which country would be the first to give visas. America was the first to give. The journey was by steamer to Brooklyn. We sailed for 2 weeks. It was November and their journey coincided with the Thanksgiving holiday. The ship's cook tried to treat everyone and cooked a traditional turkey. The brethren and the monks thinking about what to do. They had to eat potatoes and beans while there was a feast around. We arrived in New York, went to Jordanville. It was dark and snowy. Later, one of the most beautiful cathedrals of the Russian diaspora, Holy Trinity, was erected in the monastery. Vladika Loris treated his family very warmly. Not far from New York and New Jersey lived his cousin, other relatives and acquaintances. He visited them when he had the opportunity and was glad that he could relax with his family. Vladika always called his sister and brothers in Slovakia, congratulated them on holidays, and received them in New York. I didn't think about the priesthood. And how did your family end up in America? We are Belarusians by nationality, fleeing the consequences of the communist coup. Trying to preserve their faith, my ancestors left for Germany, and from Germany they moved to Brazil, to the city of São Paulo. They were already Russian people there. They created a parish and stuck together. In 1965, my parents came from São Paulo to the city of Rochester in upstate New York. There they were married in the Church of the Intercession, where my elder brother Pavel was born. So that's just a little bit about the Metropolitan Nicholas. I'm mluvit česky spotny. I speak Czech bad. I do know how to order an Americano in Czech Republic, though, with cream and sugar. Kava americká slamek a cukr. Prosím. Prosím is please. So I spent some time there as well, and I drove an old Russian car into Slovakia. And the Slovak border guards in their tall fur hats were looking totally perplexed. Like, what is this American guy doing trying to get across the border in a 1970 orange Skoda rear-engine car? It took a little while for them to let me through. I didn't know if they were going to shoot me or let me go for about probably 45 minutes. And finally, they just waved me through like they were upset. They're just like, ah. Then I went and had some coffee at a bar in Slovakia. And everybody in that little country bar was absolutely shocked. Like, what's this American doing in here ordering a coffee and a plate of goulash? Just totally different there. It's more like a beef stew, and then it has boiled sliced dumplings with it. Totally nothing like American goulash. So I think I'll keep this reading separate and do a different one next. I'm going to find some more stuff to read to you guys. I love you all. Thanks for joining. What's that say? Why are you crying? Yeah, the food there is pretty excellent. Oh, I'm forgetting so much on how to speak in those languages. I don't even know how to order goulash anymore. I have to think about it. But when I went over there, I went from Czech Republic into Austria, and then from Austria back into Czech Republic, and then into Slovakia. That was back before I was close with the church. So I'll be back in a little bit. I'm going to make up some coffee, re-energize myself, and find some more stuff to read. This last reading was a little bit not what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be more about love of prayer to tie in with the loneliness and why we are lonely and how to combat it. And then how prayer is so important. Because when we're feeling lonely and down, we need to ask God to help us, to comfort us. He wants to give us good gifts. And that's something that I wanted to say, is that we need to ask God to help comfort us when we're feeling down and broken. And He's there. There's been lots of times where it's hard here in Alaska, especially because I gave up all the sinful stuff. I don't go to the bars and drink anymore. I don't run around. I don't chase women. I don't watch movies. I try to keep harmful content out of my ears and away from my eyes. So it makes it even tougher. Sometimes it actually feels like a monastery being here. And then I ask God and tell Him that I need strength and things, strengthen my faith, and tell Him that I can't do things on my own. And He always helps me through. He hasn't let me down ever. When I came up here to Alaska, it was kind of a trip of self-destruction. You've heard me talk about it earlier. I broke up with the love of my life who left me. And I gave up on having a military career and got out of the military as fast as I could. And then I just kind of floundered around, started getting in with the wrong people, the wrong crowd, getting into trouble because I was broken and I didn't care. And the only church that I had around me were the kind of churches that were prosperity preachers. They just wanted money. No one was a spiritual father to anybody. They weren't trying to help people in their life. They just wanted to do their sermon Sunday for an hour, kick you out the door after collecting your money, and that was it. And I think that's done so much damage in our country. No one ever taught me about struggling. The first time I went to an Orthodox church up here in Alaska was with Father Bardwell at All Saints of America Orthodox Church. And he's the one that kind of taught me that things aren't going to be easy. You're going to have to fight, but God's not going to leave you alone. That it's going to be a struggle. He taught me when I was starting to feel down, when I was feeling so broken, because I was really at the end of my rope with life by the time I got to the church. And he told me, when you're feeling down, do something. Maybe you have to go run, go for a walk, go for a run, do push-ups, do prostrations, pray. But just don't sit around and be idle and feel sorry for yourself. It's like you're going to have to put in some work and do something. And that was really good advice that he gave me. At the time, to be honest, I thought, this doesn't even make any sense. I feel like crap. Why do I want to do a bunch of prostrations? Or why do I want to go for a run or get tired? To me, at the time, it sounded like foolishness. Like, can't you see that I'm broken? Who wants to go for a run and do prostrations? But it helped. It was sound and perfect advice. So that's what I did. And man, what a war. Boy, the devil didn't want me to become a part of the church. The devil did not want me to become Orthodox. Looking back, that was so clear, because I literally felt like I was in hell. It got to the point where I had to pray just to make it through the next 15 minutes. He attacked me every way that he possibly could, and over and over and over again. Spiritual warfare is real. And if you're really honestly trying to create a relationship with God, you're going to get attacked like you've never felt before. So you need to be prepared for it. And you need a spiritual father to guide you on how to do this, because it's not something that just comes out of the blue and you just know how to deal with it. So I'm so thankful to him for helping me so much, and for all my brothers and sisters in the church. Yep. God loves you all so much more than I can ever express. And our holy guardian angel, when you think about that, God gives us a guardian angel that is only with us. We're the only human being that guardian angel ever gets to be with for their lifetime. The only one. And never again. How amazing is that? How incomprehensible is that? So I love you all. I'll be back in a little bit. Yep. Probably be back, I don't know, 20 minutes, half an hour or so. Thank God. Thank God we have such a merciful and loving God. I love you all, and I'll see you in a little bit. Be blessed.